Hello everyone, welcome to the Buzz the Prey Manga. Today we continue the latest Global Freeze chapter, rewritten and edited by me in English for a smooth reading experience. All visuals and story flow are personally edited to give you the best manga style storytelling. Support the original creator by checking the official manga. So let's dive right into the today's chapter.
Chapter 29:01. Let's each show our unique abilities. Let's not cause trouble for Chaos and the others. Morana said coldly, let's retreat first. The fact that she killed 5 wild puppet has already proven that she is powerful enough. Her power is called, which may not be suitable for dealing with someone whose power is only enough to seal. There's nothing shameful about it. After all, even those 2 Black Knight-level powerhouses couldn't destroy the cores of these desolate puppets, no matter how many times they crushed them. This matter still needs to be handled by Zhang Yi or Li Changgong. The same applies to other directions of the battlefield. Saladin, Merlin, King Arthur, and others initially used their own power to touch these wild puppets, testing the strength of their attacks. Excalibur. King Arthur's sword unleashed a powerful sword light, sweeping past several wild puppets in one strike. His immense power, combined with his king's authority, significantly weakened the wild puppets' defenses. All those wild puppets were cut in 2 from their chests. However, the core of flesh and blood still remained, without the slightest trace of injury. Merlin and Saladin also made their moves, but even with the combined efforts of their subordinates, they could only destroy the physical body of the wild puppet. They could not damage its core. Therefore, they ultimately concluded that destroying the physical bodies of these wild puppets was not particularly difficult. However, they were unable to destroy its core. As long as the core remains intact and the physical bodies of these wild puppets are not completely destroyed, their flesh and blood can regenerate. It's pointless to try to deplete all the energy in their bodies. They could even lie on the ground, gnawing on the thick, solid metal floor to strengthen their bodies. To everyone's surprise, on this battlefield, there really was someone capable of dealing with these wild puppets, fighting with exceptional composure, and even displaying absolute dominance. You think it's Zhang Yi and his group? No, it's not. Zhang Yi decided to deal with these desolate puppets by sealing them into the netherworld. However, his efficiency in taking action was not particularly high. After witnessing his actions, the Reca became wary of him and began to evolve adaptively. At the beginning of the war, it was Li Changgong, Deng Shintong, and the Suzuka trio who completely suppressed the Reca. Li Changgong's strength is beyond question. When the tide of wild puppets surged in, he was the first to rush forward and killed several wild puppets in one go. This forced those wild puppets to evolve ranged attack abilities to wear him down. What they will face in the next moment is a being that truly overcomes them. Deng Shintong clasped his hands together, and a dazzling light slowly condensed in his palms. Rise, heavenly Tao star. A white star, no bigger than a marble, rapidly rose into the sky. During this process, it continued to grow larger, eventually becoming like a silver moon hanging high above everyone's heads, radiating a dazzling yet cold light. The Great Sumeru Illusion. Light can penetrate anywhere. When those desolate puppets were enveloped in light, they collectively fell into an eternal illusion. In a short period of time, the hundreds of wild puppets in front of them all fell into a state of chaos. They stopped attacking Deng Shintong and the others, and instead looked at each other, roaring with anger and greed, and began to fight each other. What did you do to them? Li Changgong looked at Deng Shintong with some resentment. Deng Shintong said calmly, we've all said it before, these guys are brainless. I just created an illusion that's almost indistinguishable from reality, and then made them see each other as prey. That's it. Li Changgong stared intently at the desolate puppets. Next, let's see if they can adapt to illusion magic. Yes, I wonder if they'll adapt or not. I'm looking forward to it too. Because my illusion magic isn't just about confusing people's eyes. The strongest power in the Great Sumeru Illusion is synesthesia. When one's gaze falls upon the light of the heavenly Tao star, all of one's perceptions are altered. Vision affects taste, smell, hearing, and even touch. Everything he sees and everything his skin touches is under the control of Deng Shintong. Therefore, their brains do not perceive them as being under an illusion. They simply perceive them as being in reality. Once changes occur at the cognitive level, is it still possible to generate adaptive evolution? Li Changgong's gaze deepened, and he murmured to himself, if that's the case, then mentalists with illusion magic are their best nemesis. No, I don't think it's that simple. How could such a powerful star clan leave such a large vulnerability in their bioweapons? That's right. Deng Shintong stared intently at them. So, I've been wondering, when exactly will they realize all this? As Deng Shintong spoke, he looked at Li Changgong and asked, what are you waiting for again? Li Changgong slapped his forehead. That's right, I almost forgot. Why not just kill them before they have time to react? Those unconscious puppets became lambs to the slaughter. Li Changgong activated his flying cloud step, instantly closing the distance and rushing over to kill them in one fell swoop. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of wild puppets died at Li Changgong's hands. Suddenly, Deng Shintong's eyes changed, and a powerful force surged into his body from nothingness. This is a gift from the Creator. In this hunt, he was also identified as a primary participant, and therefore could share the ether reward with Li Changgong. This immediately excited Deng Shintong. As expected, if you want to keep getting stronger, you can only survive by fighting and killing and have an epiphany between life and death. Soon after, he discovered another strange phenomenon. As expected, those wild puppets that were still far away and had not been killed by Li Changgong quickly underwent adaptive changes. Suddenly, their eyes turned completely black, utterly blocking out the intrusion of light. Their noses twitched and their ears twitched. Even without their eyesight, they could still determine the location of Deng Shintong and his group by relying on their intense desire for prey. Roar! A wild golem let out a mournful roar and led the charge towards Deng Shintong and his group. If no one looks at your beam of light, how are you supposed to fight? Zhuke glanced at Deng Shintong and asked. Deng Shintong shrugged and drew his sword from his waist. That guy will use the most primitive methods to fight them. However, in terms of destructive power, I am indeed no match for Li Changgong. Chapter 29:02 The Manipulator in the Dark and the Void. One after another, prisms formed of light appeared around Li Changgong and the others, covering a radius of 1,000 meters. Deng Shintong drew his sword, and a chilling sword light emanated from the rapier. When the sword was thrust fiercely into the void, hundreds of sword lights were released from the visible prism in the void, piercing the attacking puppets and leaving terrible wounds on their bodies. Etched by the heavens. Utilizing the propagation of light, it can instantly attack any point within the range of the domain. No attack can outrun the speed of light. Deng Shintong held his rapier upright in front of him and said with a faint smile, "This is all I can do when facing them. There's no need to do anything unnecessary. Slaying the physical body of the wild puppet again and again is futile." During a previous battle, Suzuka had been watching the two fight from the sidelines. Once their fight ended, she walked forward step by step. All right, it's my turn now. Her gaze slowly turned cold, and a powerful supernatural ability surged from the depths of her body, causing her eyes to turn icy blue. The temperature in the surrounding space dropped sharply. A blue, icy power emanated from her limbs and bones, enveloping her body and forming a ring of smoke. With a bang, a pair of enormous, ice-blue wings unfolded behind her. That was not ice, but flames, blue, burning flames. However, after the flames began to rise, Deng Shintong felt his body temperature drop rapidly. The flames burning on the ice feather vermilion bird draw energy from all the surrounding matter. Therefore, its burning is capable of consuming the energy of all things. Ice flame. With a swift wave of her slender hand to the side, a fierce storm of blue ice and flames began to swirl around her body. The flames grew increasingly turbulent, forming an enormous flame storm that swept towards all the wild puppets in all directions. The moment those wild puppets were enveloped by the flames, they subconsciously began to use their bodies to absorb this power, analyze it, and undergo adaptive evolution. What they didn't expect was that these flames had no positive energy whatsoever, only negative energy, and could even be described as substances that, like them, were adept at absorbing the energy of others. Two negatives make a positive, and the result is that the destructive power of is further amplified. After attempting to absorb the vermilion bird's icy flames, the bodies of those desolate puppets began to disintegrate on their own. They were terrified by this and then began to frantically absorb it. The faster they absorb nutrients, the faster they break down. Within a short time, the 70 or 80 wild puppets around them were all turned into cold dust because they tried to absorb the negative energy of the flames. This scene left everyone around them dumbfounded. King Arthur and the others looked at Suzaku and his companions as if they were looking at ghosts. The Hwashu kingdom has never heard of anyone named Juke. Where did she come from? Even if King Arthur racked his brains, he would never have known how this little-known figure could have such amazing abilities. Just as Zhang Yi can remember the names of all the knights of the Round Table, he might only know King Arthur, Merlin, and Boss. Only Zhang Yi showed no surprise at the scene. Zhu Chua's talent was among the best of all the extraordinary people he had ever seen in Hwashu Kingdom, and he was even considered to be inferior to Hotu and Jiu. However, due to various reasons, the cultivation of this girl's supernatural abilities stagnated back then, and she even had to sacrifice several azure dragons and white tigers to support her. Now, she has finally begun to understand and use her powers, and in an instant, her strength has increased dramatically. This might be the legendary saying, "If one hears the way in the morning, one can die content in the evening." Zhang Yi whispered to the others, "Don't panic. These guys aren't as strong as we thought. Engage them in fierce combat, swiftly destroying their bodies and sealing them away. If you manage to do that, continue attacking until you retreat, and let someone with sealing abilities handle it." As Zhang Yi spoke, the divine refining in his hand suddenly erupted, piercing through the bodies of more than a dozen wild puppets and forcibly dragging them toward himself. Zhang Yi's physical strength is not particularly strong, but he is able to lift a spaceship with his bare hands thanks to the God Destroyer armor. The power of those desolate puppets was no match for his, so he simply dragged them to his side, and then the giant netherworld gate opened, absorbing them all inside. The battle was progressing more and more smoothly. Of those thousands of wild puppets, 400 or 500 were sealed away in the blink of an eye, or reduced to a state where only their cores remained. At this point, the remaining Reca, a type of monster, launched another attack. As if guided by some force, they turned around and, without hesitation, fled rapidly into the distance. One by one, their bodies underwent bizarre changes. Some grew 8 long legs like wild beasts, while others grew wings of flesh and blood. In short, all actions are for one purpose: to escape this area. They fled to every corner of the world. This behavior is exactly the same as all the desolate puppets that Zhang Yi and his group had seen before. What's wrong with these guys? When did the wild puppet learn to be afraid? Uncle Yu looked shocked. Zhang Yi also looked puzzled. Could it be that these guys have developed intelligence? But they don't seem to be very smart either. Since the escape routes of those wild puppets were too scattered, chasing them was not very meaningful. Because on the entire experimental planet, we know how many Iragu are still alive. A vague sense of unease began to linger in everyone's minds. There must be something fishy about everything. They would rather these wild puppets fight them to the death than see their unusual behavior. After the desolate puppets completely disappeared, Zhang Yi pondered for a while, then gathered everyone together and asked, "This matter is very strange. What do you think?" At this moment, everyone's gaze darted back and forth between Zhang Yi and Deng Shintong. The shock left by the battle just now, involving Deng Shintong, Li Changgong, and Zhuke, has not yet completely disappeared. Those foreigners, in particular, deeply felt the changes that Zhang Yi had brought to the entire Hwashu kingdom. King Arthur proposed a conjecture at this time. Their actions appeared very disciplined. Whether it was the timing of their attacks or the decisions they made when fleeing, It was completely unlike the behavior of some mindless ghouls. Therefore, I suspect they must be under the control of some commander. Chapter 2903 Type. Blackbird retreated with a group of desolate puppets, but Zhang Yi and the others did not make any rash moves. If these undead puppets can truly be controlled by humans, then the number of undead puppets on the entire experimental planet could reach tens of thousands or even millions. When the time comes, they will swarm in and, no matter how many of them there are, they will definitely be surrounded and killed. But if someone on the experimental planet could control the wild puppet long ago, why didn't they send a large number of wild puppet troops to the planet when they first arrived? What exactly happened in between? It's truly baffling. Zhang Yi called out to everyone around him. All right, let's keep going. These guys could attack again, at any time. Let's get out of here as soon as possible. After the battle, everyone had experienced the power of the wild puppet. At this moment, while they were excited, they were also somewhat wary. If not for exceptionally powerful individuals like Zhang Yi, Li Changgong, and Zhu Ke by their side, they would have a very high chance of perishing if entangled with more than 10 desolate puppets. So everyone followed Zhang Yi and walked deeper into the experimental area. This time, Zhang Yi didn't let everyone hide in a shadow. He needs to get these people used to fighting in danger. Moreover, even for the 4 Black Knights, it would be difficult to face countless wild puppet at the same time. Someone would be needed to buy them time and clear out the minions. After Zhang Yi and the others left, the desolate puppets receded like the tide. After they faded away, they gathered together in a certain place, converging on a fixed area. There, the blackbirds silently awaited their return. The type of desolate puppet, which would only launch a frenzied attack in the most violent manner when facing outsiders, was unusually calm at this moment. Blackbird stretched out and directly grabbed a wild puppet in its grasp. The metal bird beak mask opened, revealing a large mouth covered with fangs. Without hesitation, he took a bite, tearing off a large chunk of flesh from the Type 1 wild puppet, crunching and swallowing it along with the viscous blood and internal organs. So that's how it is. That's what these guys' abilities are all about. After devouring a Type 1 wild puppet, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He then waved his hand, and the Type 1 wild puppets immediately scattered in all directions. What they did was very simple. They simply started gnawing on everything around them that they could eat. The experimental planet has been destroyed, so there is no need to worry about it causing damage to the local area. They can consume any kind of metal, experimental equipment, or anything else that exists in this universe, transforming it into everything they need. Meanwhile, Blackbird began to exercise its dominance as a Type 1 Aragu, summoning more Type 1 Aragu to this area. Zhang Yi's premonition came true. Less than half a day after they left, the second wave of the Aragu attacked again. Unlike the first attack, this batch of wild puppets was not only more disciplined, but their abilities could even be adapted to each of Zhang Yi and his companions. For example, when dealing with Zhang Yi and Li Changgong, 2 key targets that could be eliminated at close range, they would not engage in close combat, but instead launch attacks from a distance as energy cannons. When facing opponents like Shunfeng and Luo Qiao, who cannot inflict fatal damage, they will utilize their regenerative advantages to engage in relentless close-quarters combat. However, this was not enough to pose a fatal threat to Zhang Yi and his group. In less than 10 minutes, the wild golems fled in all directions after leaving behind more than 100 corpses. Zhang Yi couldn't take it anymore. He took out the judgment longbow, knocked several arrows in one go, and shot several wild puppets to death from a distance. Before their bodies could reassemble, their cores were sealed within the netherworld. Those desolate puppets are living well in the netherworld. They don't need to breathe, eat, or have water or oxygen. They've entered a state of limbo in the netherworld, like a cold, lifeless stone, yet they can't be killed. Luo Qiao and Shunfeng walked over and reminded Zhang Yi, "Have you noticed that these wild puppet demons seem a little different from the last wave?" Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow and said, "He seems to have gained some wisdom compared to before." "No, that's not intelligence," Lochte said. "It's that they've begun to adapt to our abilities. Zhang Yi frowned even more deeply. What exactly is their purpose in doing this? Do you think you can take us down with just these ordinary wild puppets? That's wishful thinking. Even if they really wanted to fight us to the death, they should have launched a full-scale attack with all the wild puppets. Why did they only sacrifice a portion each time, allowing the rest to retreat before launching another attack? He couldn't understand it. Just then, Yang Xinxin looked at the departing figures of the desolate puppets, a strange light flashing in her eyes. She said, "There is another possibility. They are gathering intelligence." Yang Xinxin's words drew everyone's attention. Everyone wanted to hear how this top strategist of the Huaxiu kingdom would explain this unusual phenomenon. Zhang Yi asked, Xian, what are your thoughts on this? If they need to gather intelligence, for whom are they gathering it? You mean there's something even more powerful on this experimental planet? He was somewhat puzzled. The Star Clan should no longer exist. Otherwise, it's impossible for the Earthlings to have left no trace of them over the long cosmic era, unless they left behind some kind of artificial intelligence. Yang Xinxin said to Zhang Yi, although these desolate puppets are troublesome, once we understand their behavior patterns, there's still ways to seal them. I believe that given their level of sophistication, they couldn't possibly be the ultimate biological weapons created by the star race. There must be an entity capable of controlling them much, like a general commanding an entire army on the battlefield. Although she didn't witness the appearance of the type wild puppet in person, Yang Xinxin had already vaguely guessed what kind of existence it was. She raised a slender, white finger. If such a general-like role exists, then all the actions of these puppets make sense. He repeatedly sent large numbers of wild puppets to attack us, but each time he didn't fight them to the bitter end. Instead, after gathering some intelligence, he would send the wild puppets away immediately. Each time they gather intelligence about us, combined with the adaptive evolutionary abilities of these wild golems, they grow stronger before reappearing before us. Finally, a look of seriousness appeared in her eyes. If they can fully adapt to our abilities and undergo corresponding adaptive evolution, imagine if there were several such beings. We might really have a hard time dealing with them. Chapter 29:04 Ya and Wang Lai. Upon hearing this, the expressions of everyone in the audience became serious. Aside from a few individuals with special powers, everyone else on the field hated dealing with these troublesome guys, even those at the Black Knight level like Shunfeng and Luo Qiao. Even space-time, which also possesses spatial attributes, lacked the power to kill these wild puppets. Once the wild puppet finds a way to break the spatial constraints, the advantage of space-time over the wild puppet will be greatly weakened. At that time, it is not entirely impossible for it to be killed by a single wild puppet. They are preventing us from going any further. Lokti came to his conclusion. It seems we've chosen the right direction, but if we continue down this path, the dangers we face will only increase. He stopped there and didn't continue. Because everyone knew what he was trying to say, knowing there was great danger ahead, should we still continue forward? The second wave of the wild puppet tide attack already made them feel somewhat strained. What about the third or fourth wave? How many of these mutated, powerful life forms exist on the experimental planet? Nobody knows. At this moment, everyone was waiting for Zhang Yi, the leader of this operation, to give his answer. After crossing his arms and pondering for a moment, Zhang Yi gave his decision. Of course, we should continue to delve deeper. If we all choose to retreat when faced with such minor difficulties, then we shouldn't even think about becoming stronger or facing more terrible risks in the future. Zhang Yi has enough confidence in herself. He possesses the highest level of spatial power within the Black Knight rank and is an unstoppable queen-level powerhouse, whose experimental planet was mostly destroyed by the White Dragon Prince and other super races. So, in the worst-case scenario, he could still gather everyone into his shadow and escape the pursuit of those wild puppets. He managed to run, which is the source of Zhang Yi's confidence in venturing deep into the experimental planet. After hearing Zhang Yi's explanation, no one objected, because they are all very confused right now. If they lose the protection of Zhang Yi, the so-called Black Knight-level powerhouse with absolute defense, they would feel terrified to walk alone on the experimental planet. The most correct choice right now is to align ourselves with and submit to the strong. After the second wave of wild puppet tide receded, the black bird devoured another wild puppet alive. With each piece of flesh it eats, it gains a special memory. That was the strange energy emanating from Zhang Yi and his companions on the battlefield, like glimmers of light and dust, which was recorded on the bodies of these desolate puppets. After the blackbird swallows this flesh and blood, its body will automatically learn the characteristics of those forces and adapt and evolve to counter them. Someone actually managed to destroy the core of the Reca. What a bizarre power. There are also guys who can unleash negative energy that clashes with normal abnormal energy. These two are a bit troublesome, but they don't seem to be very strong, so killing them shouldn't be too difficult. As for the remaining few, I gradually figured out how to deal with them. Soon, very soon. Once I've gathered all their intelligence, I can kill them all. I will absolutely not allow them to venture deep into the experimental planet. At this moment, battles broke out in all directions of the entire experimental planet. After the Type 2 wild puppets were revived, they did not fall into blind fighting. They are intelligent beings, but even they do not have absolute power to suppress these Black Knight-level powerhouses. After all, they are warriors, and warriors are suited for the battlefield, not the dueling arena. The longer the war lasts, the more terrifying their power becomes. Any of the myriad races' forces that ventured deep into various parts of the experimental planet, especially the weaker ones, had long been devoured by the wild puppet. Meanwhile, powerful figures like Hulan and Mengqi, who were at the Black Knight level, were successively located by the even more powerful Type 2 wild puppet, and a murderous aura permeated all areas of the experimental star. At this very moment, a somewhat rudimentary-looking spaceship, swaying and emitting black smoke, landed on the experimental planet. The hatch was kicked open forcefully. A rather short guy, even shorter than an average human, jumped out of the spaceship with an indignant look on his face. His most distinctive feature is the two large incisors extending from his upper jawbone. This is a unique individual from the Tuth tribe, named Daya. Among the alien races of the, is considered a third-rate character, while is merely a white knight-level alien with an alien index of over 50,000. So after arriving in this star system, unfortunately, their fleet was attacked, and eventually, Daya's ship lost contact with the main force, and Daya crashed hastily onto Daya's experimental star. Damn it, those guys' flesh is as hard as pig iron, it's breaking my teeth trying to gnaw on it. He touched his front teeth and complained somewhat angrily. Their most powerful weapon is this pair of teeth. Not only can it devour extremely hard objects, but it also possesses the power of infinite regeneration. It was with these two incisors that he managed to bite the wild golems when they attacked him, and then escaped by using his quick wit and the unique agility of a rodent. Just as Daya was complaining, a huge figure appeared from the cabin behind him. The hatch, which was over 3 meters high, seemed incredibly small in front of him. The figure struggled to emerge, revealing a creature over 8 meters tall, clad in heavy silver-gray armor, with 2 battle swords stuck in its back. Judging from its appearance, it should belong to the Irohi tribe of a type of reptile. However, since most of the tribes at this time have similar appearances, it is impossible to determine which tribe it belongs to. Dia turned around, looked at the big, simple-minded guy behind him, put one hand on his hip and said to him, "Wang Lai, I kindly gave you a ride. From now on, you have to do your duty as a bodyguard and don't let those damn zombie-like things get close to me." Wang Lai scratched his head sheepishly. "No problem, Brother Mouse. But I want to know where we are now. I can't seem to find my people." He looked to the left and right, but at this point he couldn't even clearly distinguish east from west, north from south, or even up from down. Big Tooth rolled his eyes. He found the large lizard by chance while fleeing for his life. At that time, Wang Lai didn't even have a spaceship anymore, so he relied on his armored suit to fly through the universe. Chapter 2905 Attack Wuda thought that he looked strong and healthy, and since he himself could not guarantee that he could survive in the difficult environment, he brought along this big, seemingly strong but actually foolish guy. To his surprise, the other party turned out to be a terrible navigator, and even said that he had gotten separated from his own people shortly after entering the starry sky corridor, which left him speechless. De looked at his broken spaceship with a pained expression. However, he still quickly removed the spaceship's core. As long as the nuclear propulsion system is preserved, it doesn't matter if the outer shell of the spaceship is destroyed. On this experimental planet, the one thing they have no shortage of is materials. They can go back and rebuild a larger and more powerful spaceship. However, the most important thing right now is to save my own life. Big Eyes darted around. This place is very dangerous. You'd better stick close to me. Fong, as long as I'm here, we'll definitely be able to live well. After all, I have the sharpest eyes and the most sensitive sense of smell. No one can get close to us silently. Behind him, Wang Lai stretched out his left hand and pointed to his side. So, Brother Rat, you must have already sensed the enemy over there, right? De Go was taken aback. Where is the enemy? He looked to his left and saw a tall figure standing among the ruins. The person was wearing a set of purple alloy armor and had a pair of metallic wings on his back. He coldly looked down at the two people in front of him. When De saw him, he was only slightly wary. But the next moment, what appeared before his eyes made him break out in a cold sweat. Because right next to the person in purple armor, one after another, wild puppets crawled out like hyenas. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they stared intently at De Go and Wang Lai as if they were looking at prey.
Ah!
De Ji was so frightened that he covered his face and yelled, "Damn it, why is my luck so bad? I finally managed to escape from space to this planet, but I never expected to encounter so many damn guys as soon as I landed. What are we waiting for? Let's run," he said urgently to Wang Lai beside him. Wang Lai, however, pinched his chin with one hand and said, "But Brother Rat, it seems we can't escape now." Only then did De realize that more and more wild puppets were closing in from all directions. At a glance, the enemy numbered over several hundred. The commotion caused by the spaceship's landing was so great that it attracted all the nearby wild puppets, including Fei Du, who was a Type 2 wild puppet. Unlike the Blackbird, the Fit was finally revived after being sealed away for a long time. What he wants to do most right now is to have a big, satisfying meal. With so much powerful alien flesh and blood right before my eyes, if I could devour them all, my strength would surely leap forward. After all, in their time, only the Drucker clan was a formidable opponent of this caliber. Hunting down a Druck of the same level is incredibly difficult, practically beyond belief. However, these powerful alien beings before them, from who knows which era, possessed a powerful etheric aura, but lacked the despair-inducing vitality of the Druck people. To the Fit's eyes, they looked like a group of fat pigs covered in grease. If I can devour all the invading alien races on this planet, perhaps I will have the opportunity to reach the realm of the super-universe and awaken my own abilities. At that point, I will no longer be a controlled killing machine. A glint of madness flashed in Fit's eyes, and he swung his hand forward sharply, giving the order to attack. Kill them all. All the wild puppets were simply waiting for Fei Du's command. Before obtaining his permission, they had suppressed their inner desires and hunger, but now they finally began to unleash their true nature. Rumble. Hundreds of wild puppets, like war chariots, crossed the wilderness and the sky, rushing towards Daki and Wang Lai. There were no tricks involved, it was all instinct. With their near-immortal bodies, they can withstand a round of attacks from the opponent first. These bizarre creatures, created for the battlefield, were designed to serve as cannon fodder and human shields on the battlefield, absorbing enemy firepower. So the first thing they learned was to get angry. Damn it! Da's voice was even somewhat high-pitched. The rodent opened its massive jaws, unleashing a terrifying beam of dark light that shot towards a wild golem in front of it, piercing its body through the middle. However, this kind of damage is obviously meaningless to the wild puppet. Although the wild puppet lay on the ground, the blood hole in its chest quickly healed itself. The scattered flesh and blood, but those that were not completely annihilated, seemed to possess their own consciousness, crawling back along the cold metal ground and recoalescing into the body of the wild puppet. It stood up, a layer of black armor appearing on its body, and then continued to pounce on the giant at an even faster speed. Did GE's scalp tingled, and cold sweat trickled down his forehead. I can't keep attacking like this, otherwise they will be able to block all my god-slaying beam attacks. But we can't just stand here and let them bite us to death, can we? No, not no, what should I do? The attack by hundreds of wild golems arrived in an instant. 1,000 ways to escape flashed through Dag's mind, but no matter how he looked at it, he couldn't escape the fate of death under the siege of such a large number of wild puppets. After all, a white knight-level powerhouse is indeed not enough in the starry sky corridor. However, just as he was at a loss and even began to prepare for death, he heard a sharp cry like that of a flock of eagles taking flight in a long forest. Hiss! In the blink of an eye, 2 silver beams of light flashed past Daki's body like startled birds, illuminating the entire ruins. Dagu looked up in astonishment, only to see 2 beams of white light emanating from Wang Lai's hands above him. With a simple and unadorned strike, he slashed at all the wild puppets attacking from both sides. The several wild puppets that were closest to the beam were directly hit by it, their bodies emitting black smoke as they fell to the ground. At the crucial moment, Wang Lai stepped in. He pulled the 2 broad-bladed swords from behind his back with both hands. Because he was wearing heavy armor, his eyes were not clearly visible, but his aura was completely different from the adorable, directionally challenged man he had been before. You bastard, this kind of attack method is useless against them. The stronger our attacks, the faster they adapt, Des said helplessly. When we encounter these guys, there's no other way but to run away. Chapter 29:06 King descends from the sky. Upon hearing what you said, Wang Lai suddenly said in confusion, "My brother Ya told me that there are no unkillable creatures in this world." Ya paused for a moment. What your brother said is true, but these guys right now are clearly beyond the reach of common sense. Sure enough, the desolate puppets that had been knocked to the ground by the lightning stood up again. Guy said to Wang Lai, "You saw it, didn't you? You saw it, didn't you? I told you, you can't fight like this." Before he could finish speaking, the bodies of those desolate puppets suddenly exploded. Skin, bones, and flesh were all reduced to shattered dust, and bizarre blood and flesh flowed all over the ground. They are not completely dead, but their bodies have been partially destroyed. Ya's voice abruptly stopped. How did you do that?" He turned to look at Wang Lai, his eyes no longer filled with despair, but with a glimmer of hope. "My goodness, I didn't expect you to be so amazing." Meanwhile, Fei Du, who had been watching the show from afar, finally looked at the lizard wielding 2 swords with a solemn expression. Wang Lai simply said in a very honest and simple way, "My brother said that as long as the power is strong enough, there is no creature that cannot be killed and nothing that cannot be destroyed. If that's not possible, then just increase the output power of the power." The surrounding wild puppets continued to attack. The mongooses showed no fear despite the deaths of their comrades. Eating was their instinct. Looking at the desolate puppets on the ground, whose bodies were half destroyed but not completely dead, Wang Lai murmured, "Looks like I haven't done enough. Then let's increase the output of power." He gripped the 2 swords with his strong arms, and suddenly, endless silver lightning burst forth from his body like an explosion. Lightning surrounded his body, but even more so condensed on his arms and the long sword. Boundless thunderstrike. When the twin blades swept out in all directions in the simplest and most unadorned way, what truly attacked those wild puppets was no longer the blades themselves, but the thunderous long swords that spread outwards. Silver lightning pierced through their bodies one by one, forming a giant lightning net between them. At first, Fit didn't pay much attention to this person's lightning attribute attack ability, because what wild puppet excels at is dealing with attacks from those with natural and physical attributes. Slowly, he realized something was wrong. His personal combat smart device showed that the energy reaction level in front of him was getting higher and higher. The closest of the wild puppets to Wang Lai suddenly exploded out of thin air. His body formed a giant cloud of blood mist in the sky, and there wasn't even a trace left. Fit's eyes finally showed a hint of surprise. No way. No one knows better than Fito just how strong the physical bodies of these Type 1 wild puppets are. Even for a Black Knight-level powerhouse, it would be extremely difficult to blast it apart with sheer force. That's like a water pipe forcibly bursting a leather bag open. This approach is either because the opponent's strength is too great, exceeding expectations, or it's simply too foolish. Because there were hundreds of Type 1 wild puppets around, even a Black Knight-level powerhouse who poured out all his power couldn't burst them all apart. The next moment, everything that appeared before his eyes caused Fit's pupils to shrink sharply, unable to believe the reality he was seeing. After the first wild puppet was blasted into a bloody mist, more and more explosions followed, spreading in all directions along the lightning network. Bang, bang, bang. 3-headed, 5-headed, 10-headed, dozens of wild puppets were all blown away into a blood mist by this single attack. Wang Lai still held his twin swords, standing quietly in place, his face expressionless. Ya was so surprised his jaw almost dropped to the ground. Wow, buddy, are you that strong? Fit's gaze, which had initially been dismissive, now held a hint of seriousness. He stepped forward and asked in a deep voice, "Who exactly are you?" Fei Du, who originally only regarded these invading alien races as his own nourishment, finally became cautious when facing Wang Lai. He wanted to know the other person's name, which showed how much he valued a rival. To show my sincerity, let me introduce myself first. I am Fidu, a Type 2 desolate puppet of the Star Clan. Seeing that the other party was so polite, Wang Lai nodded slightly and responded, "Tyrannosaurus Clan, Wang Lai." Ya looked like he'd seen a ghost. "You're actually a powerful member of the Tyrannosaurus Clan?" The Tyrannosaurus Clan, one of the 6 super races, should be deeper in the Starry Sky corridor right now. Wang Lai said somewhat embarrassedly, "When we were at the mouth, I fought those spirit creatures so fiercely that I became separated from my group. But it's okay, this is something that happens to me all the time." Gaia's eyes were a little wet. They were tears of excitement. "I thought I was doomed, but I never expected to encounter a powerful figure from a top-tier clan. Brother, I entrust my life to you." When Fei Du heard the name Tyrannosaurus Clan, his eyes flickered. This is a name I've never heard of before. It seems they are the rulers of the universe, who were born after our Starry Sky Clan? What era are we in now? Wang Lai answered honestly, "The 6th era is already past for us." "Is that so? 6 eras. So, you haven't achieved true freedom either?" After asking the question, Fido laughed at himself and shook his head. "No, if that were the case, you wouldn't be here." "Okay, that concludes the greetings. Although I have no grudge against you, the law of this universe is that the strong rule everything. If you want me to become an even stronger being, you must sacrifice everything of yours." As he spoke, he opened his arms, and a gray long sword popped out from his arm armor with a clang. The long sword didn't look like metal. Instead, it resembled the bones or scales of some kind of animal. Whoosh! In an instant, the Fit appeared in front of Wang Lai from thousands of meters away. The long sword, as white as bone, slashed fiercely towards the back of Wang Lai's neck. Just as the blade, accompanied by an endless gust of wind, swept towards them, Wang Lai's seemingly clumsy yet robust body twisted around with incredible speed. Chapter 2907 Thunderblade. King Lai wielded a broad-bladed longsword, which he swung up from a low angle. Crackling and popping, lightning flashed and collided fiercely with the long sword of the flying sword. The moment the lightning touched Fei Du's white bone longsword, it seemed to be weakened by 5 parts, its power rapidly diminishing. Even so, some of the electric light still traveled along the blade and spread to Hideo's body. The moment he touched the lightning, it felt as if an arc of electricity pierced through his entire body from the depths of his pupils. Every cell in my body was trembling, and my fingers, which were gripping the knife, even felt a slight stinging sensation. "So, that's what your ability is all about." Now I finally understand why Wang Li could so easily blast away those Type 1 wild puppets. Because Wang Li's boundless lightning strikes are not ordinary electric currents at all, they are extremely weak and can be transformed into nanoscale lightning scalpels for electric piercing attacks. Simply put, it directly attacks enemy units, specifically enemy cells. When the lightning strikes the bodies of those wild golems, the electric current flows along the cells between them, like thin, sharp spikes, weaving back and forth between each cell of the wild golem. This rendered the flesh regeneration ability that the wild puppet was most proud of completely useless. Fit was amazed by Wang Li's abilities, but only for a moment. To pay the price, a portion of one's flesh and blood must directly bear the damage from Wang Li's abilities. Fortunately, most of Wang Li's attacks were blocked by the bone knife in his hand. Immediately afterwards, in the next instant, a thick barrier formed on the surface of the cells that make up the body. As for the entire body, a strange change began to occur. The skin turned deathly pale, and a layer similar to a bone septum formed on the surface. If I can form an insulating protective layer around my body, your power will be greatly weakened, right? Facing the powerful Wang Li, Fit chose to engage in close combat directly. As the body's structural modification was completed, sure enough, Wang Li's lightning attribute attacks posed a significantly reduced threat to him. Even the long sword in his hand, formed from bone, seemed to have come alive, covered with a thick layer of ash. If you look closely, you'll see that the end of that bone is actually connected to the Fit's arm because that's part of the Fit's own body structure. In ancient times, humans discovered long before Zhang Yi that only intelligent beings could possess bodies capable of carrying supernatural abilities. If one wants to create a powerful weapon that can bear one's own power, one must use a different person as a medium. The character, to turn a mutated creature into a weapon, is a person who turns a mutated creature into a weapon. The character, to turn a mutated creature into a weapon, is a person who turns a mutated creature into a weapon. For example, a Honda Fit. In front of Wang Li, it began to spin rapidly. The bone knife was extremely sharp and swift, unleashing thousands of attacks in an instant, like a storm. The bone knife attack was like a vortex, dazzling to behold. Every attack of his carried an extremely frenzied, destructive power. Wang Li was momentarily surprised that his opponent could adapt to his boundless lightning strike so quickly. However, the next moment, the big tail swung, sweeping the big tooth out of the battlefield. Then, he swung his twin swords in a backhand motion and began exchanging blows with the Fit. Clang, clang, clang. The long swords continuously emitted loud clanging sounds. Wang Li's body may appear bulky, but when he wields his twin swords, he moves with incredible agility, like a butterfly. The dual-wielding technique allows for both offense and defense, with an extremely fast attack rhythm while maintaining perfect self-defense. Two powerful warriors at the Black Knight level engaged in a life-or-death struggle in this very moment, using the most primitive and simple methods. They moved faster and faster, their blades becoming afterimages, and even their bodies blurred and disappeared. Daya watched from afar, her heart pounding with fear. But those alien puppets wouldn't let go, and they all pounced on. Startled and furious, Big Tooth cursed loudly, then turned into a gray streak of light and shadow, limbs down, and ran away into the distance. However, after running halfway, it suddenly turned around and didn't go too far from the battlefield. I can't leave here, otherwise those barbarian soldiers will go after Wang Li. While we cannot offer assistance to the enemy on the front lines, we must at least avoid becoming a burden to them. Daya thought to himself, hey, when it comes to escaping and hiding, no one is better at it than us Giant Tooth Clan. Among the 5th generation of human races, rodents that live in the cracks, why are they able to survive among the powerful? It's because they are shameless enough and extremely good at escaping. On the other side, the battle between Wang Li and Fei Du had entered a heated phase from the very beginning. The Fit made its move without any mercy, because the more intense the battle, the faster the adaptation and evolution of the creature, and the sooner the creature can kill the opponent. After adapting to Wang Li's attacks, He became 100% certain that Wang Lai did not have the ability to instantly kill him. Then the other party will eventually be worn down and killed. Furthermore, with each clash of weapons, the physical strength of the body will continuously increase with the battle. At the beginning, was slightly at a disadvantage in terms of strength, but later on, became stronger and even became able to contend with. Your physical talent is simply amazing. Fit acted swiftly, and even had time to comment on Wang Lai. Such a powerful physical body is difficult for even our star clan to compare with. You must be a different species created by the Creator in the world after us, a race known for its physical bodies. It's a pity that you met me today. Your talents and your spiritual practice will ultimately vanish into nothingness. But you don't need to be too sad, because you will merge with my body, become a part of me, and then I will write a glorious chapter for you. While attacking, Fido verbally provoked Wang Lai's god. In battles between the strong, even the slightest lapse in judgment can lead to malfunction and cause one to fall completely into the opponent's trap. Wang Lai listened calmly, but remained silent throughout. In his eyes, he could only see the figure of Fei Du, which had become a blur and whose movements were gradually slowing down. My older brother once said that there is nothing in this world that cannot be killed, nor is there any barrier that cannot be breached. If there is any, it must be because my strength is not strong enough. His arm muscles suddenly bulged and lightning bolts suddenly surged from his two thunder blades like hedgehog quills. Countless sharp spikes, formed from lightning, spread across the blade, creating two incredibly long and narrow lightning whips that lashed fiercely at Fido. Chapter 2908, Who Isn't a God-Level Master? Ming Bian's shadow was like a dragon, twisting and deforming in midair. Combined with Wang Lai's rapid slashes, it bypassed Fei Du's frontal defense and directly struck his back. The lightning bolts are like snakes, penetrating everywhere. With a crack, the lightning whip lashed fiercely at Fei Du's body. The thunder whip, possessing immense piercing power, pierced through Fei Du's protective ability without any obstruction. Lightning pierced through his body, frantically stimulating the cells within Fei Du's body, causing a large amount of his flesh and blood to vanish into nothingness. The Fit let out a muffled groan. But soon, his flesh and blood underwent a stress-induced transformation, and a stronger defense and a thicker insulating layer appeared on the surface. With a loud bang, he was violently thrown thousands of meters away. But he got up at an extremely fast speed, and his destroyed flesh and blood rapidly recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Very good, I am now more familiar with your power. The Fit's body emitted an even stronger gray aura, and from a distance, his body even resembled a white skeleton. He used his own powerful bone structure as a powerful shield to form an insulating barrier, giving him an absolute advantage when fighting against lightning attribute users. Isn't what I've done enough? Wang Lai murmured, looking down at himself. But the Fit had already picked up the bone knife and charged forward like lightning, skimming the ground. A sharp long sword was aimed at his chest, and suddenly it stabbed. Wang Lai quickly looked up and slashed at the enemy with his twin swords. Clang! The three long swords were brought together fiercely, and the terrifying force sent the flying sword flying. However, the Fit, like a nimble snake, quickly adjusted its posture in midair and charged towards Wang Lai at an even faster speed. Lightning power, violently flashing in midair. Wang Lai's attacks remained as domineering as ever, but their impact on the Fit was becoming increasingly smaller. In terms of ability attributes, the ability becomes increasingly powerful as the level increases. In the blink of an eye, the two had been fighting for a full minute. In that 1 minute, Fit and Wang Lai had exchanged blows tens of thousands of times. He himself was also moving at an extremely rapid speed. He had thoroughly understood Wang Lai's abilities. Lightning is his most powerful attack method. As long as he avoids having all his cells destroyed in an instant by that powerful lightning, the Black Knight level Fit will not die. So even in the worst-case scenario, where his physical body is extensively destroyed, he can summon a type of wild puppet from the surrounding area to repair his body. If the war of attrition continues at this pace, victory will be his. I will remember you, my respectable opponent. You are the most delicious nourishment for me after my rebirth. There was no sarcasm in Fit's voice. Instead, there was a sense of awe. After all, he was chosen to be transformed into a Type 2 Arago, and his strength was only at the lower end of the hierarchy. If he were still alive before the transformation, he would likely have been utterly crushed by a powerhouse of this caliber. Wang Lai remained silent. As long as you keep fighting, your strength will continue to grow. I see, I understand now. He muttered to himself. From afar came Daya's frantic screams. Being chased and bitten by a group of Type 1 wild golems was indeed very unpleasant. At this moment, Wang Lai suddenly inserted his twin swords into the scabbards behind him. This action startled the Fit. Put away your weapons? What does that mean? Does it mean you're giving up resistance? Or perhaps your forte isn't using a knife? His gaze sharpened. If from the beginning, Wang Lai in front of us had retained his original strength, he would not only possess lightning attribute abilities, but also other abilities, making him a so-called dual attribute ability user. Then, when it displays its abilities, it may become even more terrifying. Next, Wang Lai simply lowered his knees slightly and slowly opened his arms. An even more powerful and violent force of lightning erupted from his body, like a mountain. However, this power did not spread in all directions, but quickly coalesced into an extremely solid force, condensing into the core of his body and appearing about 5 centimeters above his skin. Huh? Does he mean close combat? And the energy attribute hasn't changed. It's still lightning. Fit's eyes flashed, his expression ambiguous. He didn't dare to launch a close-quarters attack at this moment. Instead, he stopped at a distance and slowly opened his mouth. A black energy ball rapidly condensed within him, accompanied by powerful flashes of lightning. That lightning-like attribute was strikingly similar to Wang Lai's energy. As he continued to fight, he was absorbing and learning Wang Lai's offensive methods and techniques. The powerful energy rapidly accumulated, forming a black lightning sphere no bigger than a fist. No sooner said than done. The lightning attack was completed in an instant, forming a black arc of light that pierced through space and shot directly towards Wang Lai's body. An extremely powerful energy fluctuation erupted rapidly, centered on Wang Lai. A terrifying black energy wave swept out in all directions. The giant teeth, which were several kilometers long, were almost blown away, while the wild puppets were swept into the sky like garbage bags. It was as if a black sun had risen from the spot. Fit stared coldly ahead. Even with your strength, you couldn't possibly take my attack head-on without getting hurt, could you? However, after the energy and light dissipated, he witnessed a scene that greatly surprised him. Faced with his full-force attack, Wang Lai simply crossed his arms to block in front of him. That strike, which concentrated all his power, only resulted in some minor scratches on his arm. Surprisingly, it didn't make him move an inch. How could this be? Fit was completely shocked. The defensive power possessed by the opponent exceeded his imagination and even surpassed his own current level of self-confidence. At this moment, Wang Lai slowly released his arm. His gaze was fixed on the distant Honda Fit, and he simply uttered a single sentence. Star Clan biotechnology is indeed very impressive. But there's something you might not know. In our time, our tribe was also known as a godlike being. Anyone that can be called a god-level being possesses technology and power that are unimaginable to lower-level races. Perhaps back in the time of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, we didn't manage to suppress the Drux for nearly 1 billion years like the Star Clan did. However, we also did not suffer the same defeat as in that war. Furthermore, considering that the Drukians could continuously advance, even if the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Dragon Clan at that time weren't necessarily as strong as the Star Clan, there wouldn't be a significant gap. Chapter 29:09 I Will Judge. These words struck Fei, due like a jolt. What exactly do you mean by that? Wang Lai said to him, What I want to tell you is that the so-called inheritance exists not only in you, but also in us. Moreover, as a truly intelligent race, I am incomparable to artificial beings like you. These words completely enraged Fit, who roared. What do you know? Do you think it was our own choice to become like this? You arrogant and conceited junior. Go to hell. Holding the bone sword, he charged at Wang Lai once more. Wang Lai raised his head and glanced at him. The next moment, a bolt of lightning rose from his feet, and his body, like lightning, hurtled forward at an unbelievable speed. You've even given up on the G? Do you intend to fight me with your bare body? Fitz sneered. Any creature of flesh and blood who tries to contend with him is, in his eyes, simply committing an act of death. Because the core he possesses is the core of the strongest biological weapon created by the Star Clan. Wang Lai said, and in the blink of an eye, he rushed in front of him. He didn't pull out his arm. Instead, he raised his thick, strong arm. An extremely concentrated and powerful thunderous aura accompanied his right fist as it slammed forward with a deafening roar. Explosive kill fist. His fist made direct contact with the Fit's bone. In that instant, the incredibly sharp cutting power on the bone was directly annihilated by an even stronger and more ferocious force. Boom! Wang Lai's fist was like a terrifying starship main cannon, spewing out an extremely powerful pure white lightning force. It was like a white river, so solidified that it instantly submerged Fei Du's entire body. I've said it countless times, energy-based attacks have no effect on me. His voice stopped abruptly, and the smile that had been mocking Wang Lai froze on his face. Because he discovered that his body, which had been insulated, was completely pierced by Wang Lai's lightning in that instant. There is no absolute defense in this world, nor is there any absolute insulator. If the pressure of thunder is strong enough, it can create a field that can be pierced, thus rendering it completely useless. In the blink of an eye, the barriers between all the cells in his body shattered. Endless lightning pierced through his entire body, like a long baptism of destruction. Fit felt his body was out of control, and his hands were no longer able to move, because his cells had already died rapidly. How so? Bloody tears streamed from his eyes, his vision blurred rapidly, and he could no longer see anything. Wang Lai explained to him in a calm, almost naive tone. Our Tyrannosaurus clan is a top-tier civilization with its own heritage, and what we believe in is absolute power. The explosive kill fist is one of the secret skills passed down by the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Is a kind of martial art, and it is also exclusive to people with lightning attribute supernatural abilities. Rather, it is a concept of controlling supernatural powers. Every Tyrannosaurus Rex who awakens their special abilities begins learning about the Da from a young age. This ability can also be practiced by Tyrannosaurus Rex. This race is characterized by its enormous and resilient bodies and a total amount of supernatural abilities far exceeding those of other races. Therefore, when they fight, they can compress their enormous supernatural abilities to the extreme, forming an instantaneous impact similar to nuclear fission. This force can penetrate down to the molecular level and destroy all known matter. Simple, pure, and powerful enough to overcome all obstacles. Fit's body slowly disintegrated. He tried to escape, but all his cells had been pierced by lightning in an instant and died quickly. Impossible. I've only just woken up. I haven't finished the mission my tribe gave me. How could I possibly die in this place? He is angry. But Wang Lai looked at him so coldly, without the slightest emotion. The remnants of the old era must live forever in their memories of glory. This universe is outdated. You are already out of touch with the times. To even dream of challenging the Creator and destroying the solar system is utterly laughable. Suddenly, the Fit roared angrily. His flesh and blood shattered, and crimson gas drifted into the air. But a final roar still escaped his throat. What do you know? You don't even have the courage to raise a banner of rebellion against the gods, so you have no right to criticize us. When the Star Clan's brilliance illuminated the universe, you saw nothing. But no matter how desperately he roared, Wang Lai was no longer arguing with him. Because the outcome is already decided, and the Star Clan's insane plan will eventually come to fruition. Fit's body vanished into thin air. It's hard to imagine that the Type 2 wild puppet, which posed a deadly threat to the powerful beings of other races on the experimental planet, was actually blasted away by Wang Lai in the simplest way within 5 minutes. Zhang Yi and his colleagues also found it hard to imagine such existence. Because in some ways, Wang Lai is a being similar to Bai Longzi. Their civilization has never been interrupted, so they also possess the most powerful supernatural power cultivation system. The Fit's body completely vanished into the air, leaving behind a strange piece of metal the size of Wang Lai's fingernail. He glanced down at the metal and touched it lightly with his fingernail. The next moment, streaks of blood-red tentacles, like sharp swords, extended from the metal and pierced directly into Wang Lai's flesh. No matter how resilient his body was, he couldn't withstand the attack from that strange tentacle. Wang Lai's pupils suddenly contracted. Without any hesitation, he ripped the finger off and threw it hard on the ground. Then he saw that the bizarre core devour his fingers. The monsters they created are indeed very scary. But using this method, it would be very difficult to create top-tier powerhouses, wouldn't it? Wang Lai rubbed his lower body. He suddenly remembered the terrifying energy fluctuations that had emanated from the depths of the starry sky corridor some time ago. He suddenly opened his eyes and said with some worry, "Will something happen to my older brother and the others?" Just then, a commotion arose from the side.
Hey,
Wang Lai, did you take him down? That's awesome. But don't forget, I'm still here. Daki's body was already riddled with bite marks, and he really didn't have any good ideas about dealing with those wild puppets. Chapter 29, 10 Blackbird's Measurement. Wang Lai looked up and saw Daya's miserable state. He quickly said, "Boss Rat, I'm here to save you." He had reverted to his simple and honest appearance, drew 2 knives, and charged forward. Before long, massive bolts of lightning flashed, turning all the desolate puppets into dust. The battle here has finally come to a complete end. Big Tooth grinned and injected himself with a drug, allowing his injuries to heal quickly. Ouch! These guys bite so hard. Damn it, they really deserve to die. Wang Lai approached him, scratched his head, and asked, "Boss Rat, where should we go next? Shouldn't we try to find a flying vehicle and leave this place?" Dia stared at Wang Lai, his eyes darting around as if he had seen a rare treasure. Unexpectedly, he had such good luck, encountering a powerful member of a top-tier race like the Tyrannosaurus Rex. He should cling to this powerful figure tightly. His face immediately lit up with a fawning expression. "Father, it might be difficult for us to leave now. There are too many unkillable creatures in the universe. Even if you're not afraid, your spaceship is still likely to crash if attacked by them. We need to come up with a foolproof plan." Dia has decided that from today onwards, Wang Lai will call him Big Brother, and he will call Wang Lai Dad. They will address each other by their own names, which is not shameful at all. Faced with Dia's sudden politeness, Wang Lai simply scratched his head and asked, "But what should we do next?" He looked around blankly. He had always had a poor sense of direction. Without a spaceship, he could travel through space for a period of time using his own physical body. But if it can't find a landing spot, it will probably end up as a space zombie. Dia looked around, calmed down, and realized he wasn't stupid. Before we arrived, we had already seen people from many different ethnic groups land here. Although this planet is very large, it's not so small that you can't find a single person. I suspect they've most likely already entered the interior of this planet. The more he thought about it, the more reasonable his analysis seemed. The legacy of the Star Clan? They're going to find the legacy of the Star Clan. Regardless of the technology used to create these alien puppets, or whether it's enough to find the means to control them deep within the planet, it represents a tremendous fortune. Dad, we can't leave this planet now anyway. Why don't we go inside and take a look? Wang Lai crossed his arms and pondered for a moment. Then Yudong nodded in agreement. It seems that this is the only way at the moment. Upon hearing this, Big Tooth excitedly got down on all fours. He closed his eyes, sniffed hard with his long, thin nose, and began to unleash the innate power of the Megalodon race. Sound waves, inaudible to the ears, rapidly spread in all directions. Using the echoes, Big Tooth accurately found the path to the underground world. "Let's go, Dad. I'll show you the way." Big Tooth had a fawning look on his face. Wang Lai scratched his head and simply nodded in agreement. On the other hand, the two figures, one large and one small, walked slowly and steadily into the depths of the experimental planet. On Zhang Yi's side, they had already repelled the invasion of the wild puppet for the 10th time. However, this time, their battle was exceptionally difficult, and many of them were injured. Alexei Ivanov, a man as strong as a bear, had a large chunk of flesh torn from his thigh, the wound gruesome and blood flowing freely. He seemed oblivious, looking down at the huge crescent-shaped bite mark, muttering to himself, "Their power has increased. Now, if I were to face two giant golems at the same time, I would have an extremely difficult time." Morana exhaled a chill and said coldly, "But the number of the wild puppets attacking us hasn't changed much. Also, it's said that the so-called general within this group of wild puppets can only control a limited number of them. Isn't that the only good news?" Zhang Yi held the demonic blade in his hand. This time, he only sealed 12 wild puppets. Because those puppets were becoming increasingly agile, all the puppets he was fighting against actually displayed spatial abilities. They would only fire alien cannons at Zhang Yi from a distance and launch spatial disturbances from all directions to compress his domain. Although it doesn't completely restrict Zhang Yi's actions, it does prevent his power from being fully unleashed. As a result, Zhang Yi had to carry out targeted removal, which naturally slowed down the process considerably. The formless realm can form a near-invincible domain around him, and any wild puppet that tries to approach him will be immediately sent far away. This prevented him from being surrounded and attacked. If he was struggling, the others were even more so. Even Li Changgong and his group were finding it difficult to fight. Li Changgong said to Zhang Yi, "Every time they escape, they take away important intelligence about us." When they returned, they had evolved to an even stronger level. If this continues, I fear that even if we turn around and fight one-on-one, most of us will be killed by these savage puppets. Zhang Yi, you're our leader, and now we need you to step up and make a decision. Zhang Yi slowly narrowed his eyes. Although they were constantly harassed by the Aragu along the way, they also gathered more and more intelligence. The vast amount of experimental data they collected provided them with immense assistance. While it's not possible to completely replicate the zombie-like methods used to create weapons, using them to strengthen the physical bodies of Huashu Kingdom warriors might offer another possibility. However, Li Changgong's words also make sense. Continuing to conduct deep experiments on the satellite, no one knows what else will be released. The enemy, lurking in the shadows, has never appeared before them directly. Now the enemy is in the dark, while they are in the light. The opposing team is playing on their home turf and can almost completely monitor their every move, while they can only passively defend. This situation is indeed very unfavorable for them. But we've already come this far. Is it really worth it to retreat like this? Zhang Yi walked to the side, found a raised spot, and slowly sat down. He crossed his eyes and closed them. Meanwhile, in a mysterious corner of the world, Blackbird, one of the Type 2 wild puppet, revived after swallowing a wild puppet. The information factors he collected within his body became increasingly comprehensive. Soon, I will have all their information collected shortly. Even if I have to face 4 Black Knight-level alien high-ranking warriors at the same time, I am confident that I can defeat them one by one. On the other side, Zhang Yi closed his eyes and meditated for a minute before falling into absolute silence.
If you love manga-style stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Buzz Play Manga. See you in the next chapter with more surprises.